Please close your eyes for just a moment. Try to remember the sharp, distinctive click of a thick plastic radio dial being turned by hand, or perhaps the sweet, heavy scent of powdered sugar resting on a warm, freshly baked pastry. Do you feel that sudden warmth in your chest? Today, we are taking a gentle journey back in time, returning to the Hungary of the 1970s and 1980s. We are going to revisit 20 incredibly magical childhood memories that defined our youth. We will remember the everyday rituals, the tastes, and the sounds that shaped who we are today. And I promise you, by the time we reach our very last memory together, you will be reminded of the most beautiful and deeply emotional connection we shared before the modern world took over. Life back then felt vastly different. Time itself seemed to flow at a much slower, more forgiving pace. We did not rush through our days with our heads buried in glowing screens. Instead, we understood the profound value of waiting. We waited for our favorite television broadcast. We waited in line at the local store, and we waited for the weekend trips to the countryside. There is a common myth today that because we lived without modern technology, our lives were somehow poorer or less exciting. But you and I know the absolute truth. Our lives were infinitely richer. They were richer in genuine, eye-to-eye human communication. They were rich in patience, in community, and in the kind of sincere joy that only comes from appreciating the little things. We did not need much to be happy, because the world around us was filled with tactile, real experiences that grounded us in love and togetherness. And now let us remember the gentle melody that signaled the end of our day. Do you recall the familiar tune of the Esti Messe, the evening tale? Every single evening the entire country seemed to pause just to watch TV Maki, the little television bear, go through his nightly routine. You would sit on the patterned carpet, your eyes fixed on the bulky wooden television set, waiting for that magical moment. The bear would carefully brush his teeth, reminding all the children that it was time to get ready for bed. The sound of that simple, soothing music instantly brings back the feeling of freshly washed pajamas and the comforting smell of baby soap. We did not have hundreds of channels back then. We had this one shared moment, a quiet ritual that united every household in the country. Your mother would be in the kitchen, wiping the counters, and she would call out, telling you to watch the bear. It was a time of undeniable innocence. The television screen glowed in the dimming light of the living room, casting soft shadows on the wallpaper. When TV Macy finally sat down in his little chair, accompanied by his tiny companion, you knew that the day was truly over. It was not just a cartoon, it was a warm blanket of security, a promise that everything in the world was exactly as it should be, and that tomorrow would bring another beautiful day of childhood. Let us turn our memories to a very special treat that defined the colder months of our childhood. Imagine walking home from school on a freezing January afternoon, the snow crunching loudly under your heavy winter boots. In your pocket, you had a few carefully saved coins, just enough to buy a telly faggy, the beloved winter ice cream. Do you remember the crinkly sound of the thin, colourful foil wrapping? This was not real ice cream, of course, because eating cold things in winter was strictly forbidden by our protective mothers. Instead, it was a wonderful heavy cone filled with a dense, sugary, cocoa-flavoured cream, topped with a thin layer of dark chocolate that would crack perfectly when you took your first bite. The texture was slightly gritty, rich, and intensely sweet, coating your tongue and warming your spirit against the chilling wind. Eating it felt like a small, delightful rebellion. You would stand outside the small grocery store, your breath turning to white steam in the frosty air, savouring every single bite. The wafer cone would often become slightly soft and chewy at the bottom, but that only made it better. Modern sweets might be more refined, but nothing will ever replicate the pure, simple joy of holding that heavy, foil-wrapped cone in your freezing, mitten-clad hands. feeling like the richest child in the whole neighborhood. And now let us remember the feeling of absolute freedom on two wheels. Close your eyes and think about the heavy, sturdy frame of the classic Chepo camping bicycle. Almost every family had one, usually in a bright, unforgiving shade of red, blue, or green. Do you recall the distinctive metallic click of the folding mechanism in the middle of the frame? It was designed to fit into the trunk of a small car, but for us, it was the ultimate vessel of exploration. The thick white tires would hum against the warm summer asphalt as you pedaled furiously down the street. The seat was wide and surprisingly comfortable, and the high handlebars made you sit up straight, feeling like the king of the world. Remember the sound of the dynamo clicking against the front tire as dusk approached. It made pedaling twice as hard, but it produced that weak, flickering yellow light that guided you home. We did not wear helmets or protective gear. We rode until our knees were scraped and our hands smelled of metallic chain grease. Your friends would sit on the back rack, their legs dangling, as you carried them across the neighborhood. That heavy bicycle was practically indestructible. It absorbed every bump, every curb, and every childish mistake. Riding that camping bike was not just about transportation. It was our first real taste of independence, carrying us toward endless summer horizons. Let us think about a flavor that is completely unique to our culture and our youth. There is a very specific feeling attached to tearing open the white foil dotted with bright red circles. Yes, we are talking about the original Turo Rudi. Do you remember the sharp, distinct snap of the dark chocolate coating as you took your first bite? It was a delicate balance of textures and tastes. The crisp, slightly bitter chocolate would immediately give way to the cold, sweet, and slightly sour cottage cheese filling with a hint of lemon. It was a messy affair, especially in the summer. The chocolate would melt onto your fingers within seconds, leaving a sticky, delicious residue that you would happily lick away. In the 1970s and 80s, finding a fresh batch at the local store felt like discovering a small treasure. The refrigerator cases at the shop always hummed loudly, and you would reach in, feeling the chill on your skin, to grab the coldest bar you could find. We did not have endless aisles of snacks, so this simple cottage cheese bar was highly prized. Mothers would often buy it as a special reward for good grades. You would eat it slowly, trying to make it last, savouring the contrast between the dark shell and the snowy white centre. It remains a taste of pure nostalgia, a sweet reminder of days when happiness cost only a few forints. And now let us remember the unforgettable journey to Lake Balaton in the family car. Can you still smell the very specific, pungent aroma of a two-stroke engine? The Trabant was not just a vehicle. It was a beloved, if sometimes frustrating, member of the family. Packing the car for a summer holiday was an intricate puzzle. Every tiny inch of the trunk and the back seat was filled with heavy canvas tents, folded blankets, and cooler bags packed with sandwiches wrapped in paper. The sound of the engine was a loud, rhythmic sputtering that you could hear from a mile away. The seats were covered in sticky synthetic leather that would burn the back of your legs in the summer heat. We did not have air conditioning. Instead, we rolled down the windows, letting the warm, dusty breeze tangle our hair as we drove at a painfully slow speed. But oh, the anticipation! Do you remember the exact moment the sparkling blue water of Lake Balaton finally appeared on the horizon? A cheer would erupt inside that tiny, cramped cabin. The journey was long and bumpy, and the car often overheated, forcing us to pull over and wait by the side of the road. Yet nobody complained. Those long, noisy rides brought us closer together. The Trabant carried us toward our happiest summer memories, chugging along faithfully under the bright, endless summer sky. Let us recall the everyday magic of stepping into a classic Kuzed grocery store. Before you even pushed the heavy glass door open, you were greeted by an intoxicating aroma. Do you remember the large industrial coffee grinding machine standing right near the entrance? The intense, rich smell of freshly ground coffee beans would permeate the entire shop, mixing with the scent of fresh, crusty bread. The store had a very specific soundscape. The heavy metal cash registers would ring with a loud mechanical clatter, and the glass bottles of milk would clink against each other in the wire baskets. Those milk bottles had thick aluminium foil caps that you could easily pierce with your thumb. The shelves were not overflowing with endless brands. There were just a few reliable items, but they were exactly what we needed. Do you remember the heavy, solid coins resting in the palm of your hand as you waited in line? The cashiers wore crisp aprons and seemed to know everyone in the neighborhood. They would tally the prices on small pieces of rough paper, their pencils moving incredibly fast. Buying bread meant tearing off a small piece of the crust on the way home, unable to resist the warm, soft center. Going to the store was not a chore back then. It was a daily ritual of community, a sensory experience that grounded us in our familiar, comforting routines. And now let us remember the magical evenings spent in the dark with a slide projector. Long before the age of instant digital entertainment, we had the diafilm. Do you recall that distinctive, slightly dusty smell of the hot bulb heating up the metal casing of the projector? It was a scent that meant the evening was about to turn into a cinematic adventure. Your father would pull down the white roller blind or simply hang a neatly ironed white bedsheet on a living room wall. The room would go completely dark, and then a bright rectangular beam of light would cut through the shadows. The sound of the plastic film clicking into place as the reel was turned by hand was incredibly satisfying. Click, clack. A new colourful image would appear on the wall. We did not just watch these stories, we participated in them. Someone in the family had to read the short white text printed at the bottom of each frame. The whole family would sit together on the sofa, huddled in the dark, listening to the reader's voice bring the fairy tales to life. Sometimes the film would get stuck, and the image would start to bubble and melt on the screen, causing everyone to panic and laugh. Those evenings were intimate, slow, and wonderfully cozy. The slide projector created a small, glowing world in our living room, fueling our imaginations far better than any modern screen ever could. Let us turn our minds to the familiar weekend soundtrack of the Haidu washing machine. Washing clothes was not a silent background task in the 1970s and 80s. It was a major household event that commanded attention. Do you remember the sheer physical presence of that cylindrical machine in the corner of the small bathroom? The smell of warm, soapy steam mixed with the strong, clean scent of Amo soap or Tommy detergent would fill the entire apartment. But the true memory lies in the sound of the centrifuge. When it was time to spin the water out of the heavy cotton sheets, the machine would transform into a roaring beast. It would vibrate violently, shaking the bathroom floor, sometimes slowly walking across the tiles on its own. Your mother would often have to hold it down with her hands to keep it steady. The noise was deafening, but it was a comforting, domestic rumble that meant the weekend chores were getting done. Afterward, you would help carry the heavy, damp clothes in a plastic basket to the balcony or the courtyard. Pinning the bright, clean laundry to the line with wooden clothespins was a quiet, methodical task. The rough texture of the sun-dried towels against your skin the next day was a testament to the hard work. That loud, vibrating machine was the beating heart of our weekly routine, a symbol of a well-kept, loving home. And now let us remember a simple bakery treat that defined our school days. Think about the sweet, intoxicating smell emanating from the school buffet or the local bakery during the morning break. Yes, we are thinking of the classic Kakao's Chiga, the beloved cocoa roll. Do you recall the precise strategy required to eat it properly? No one ever started from the middle. You would always begin by biting the outer edges. The outside was slightly dry, crispy, and lightly dusted with powdered sugar. But as you worked your way inward, the pastry became softer, richer, and increasingly saturated with sweet, dark cocoa. The very center was the ultimate prize, a dense, doughy core oozing with chocolate. Eating it was a delightfully messy experience. The thin layers of pastry would flake off and fall onto your school uniform, and your fingers would become wonderfully sticky with sugar and cocoa. We did not have fancy wrapping. The cashier would simply hand it to you on a thin, slightly translucent piece of paper. You would sit on the school bench with your friends, your feet dangling, savoring every sweet bite while discussing your homework or trading marbles. That simple pastry provided the energy we needed to run around the courtyard. It was more than just a snack. It was a daily moment of pure, unadulterated joy in the middle of a long school day. Let us recall the pride of every living room, the massive wooden war unit known as a secrenisor. In those days, outfitting a panel apartment was a matter of great importance, and this piece of furniture was the absolute centerpiece of the home. Do you remember the smooth, varnished surface of the wood and the faint smell of beeswax polish that lingered in the air after spring cleaning? These war units covered an entire wall, from floor to ceiling, imposing and magnificent. Behind the heavy glass doors laid a very specific treasure. There were crystal bowls, intricately painted jaune or herond porcelain cups, and delicate glasses that were almost never used. They were meant strictly for display, reserved for highly esteemed guests or special holidays. The lower cabinets hid a different world. They stored folded bed linens, old photo albums smelling of dusty paper, and maybe a hidden bottle of unicum for the adults. The television set, heavy and square, occupied the central open shelf like a revered altar. Dusting that massive piece of furniture was a weekly chore that required patience and care, carefully lifting each precious porcelain dog and replacing it in exactly the same spot. That war unit was not just storage. It was a symbol of stability, a display of the family's hard work and the very foundation of our living room coziness. And now let us remember the unforgettable summer days spent at the pioneer camps, especially the grand camp at Zanka. Can you still hear the sharp, clear sound of the morning bugle cutting through the cool, fresh air of the forest? Waking up in those wooden cabins or large tents was an adventure in itself. You would quickly put on your uniform, making sure the iconic red or blue tie was perfectly knotted around your collar. Do you recall the smell of the damp pine needles mixed with the scent of strong tea and bread with butter served in the large dining hall? The days were highly structured, filled with morning formations, flag-raising ceremonies, and endless singing. Yet, within those rules, there was a profound sense of camaraderie. We collected scrap metal and paper during the year just to earn our place in these camps. The evenings were the most magical part. We would gather around a massive, crackling campfire, watching the orange sparks dance into the dark night sky. We sang songs until our throats were hoarse, leaning against the shoulders of new friends from different towns. We learned how to tie knots, how to navigate by the stars, and how to work as a team. Those summer weeks at Lake Balaton shaped our character. They taught us resilience, friendship, and the immense value of belonging to a community that felt as big as the world. Let us think about the ultimate refreshment on a blistering hot summer afternoon. Before the market was flooded with endless international brands, we had our own special drinks. Do you remember the heavy, ribbed glass bottle of the original Bambi, or the elegant green glass of Trauby soda? Holding that cold bottle against your sweaty forehead after running outside was pure bliss. The Bambi had a very distinct, slightly synthetic orange flavor that coated your mouth with sweetness. The Traubi soda, on the other hand, tasted like real, fresh grapes, sparkling and crisp. Do you recall the sharp, loud hiss as the metal cap was finally pried off with a bottle opener? The carbonation was incredibly strong, and the first sip would often make your eyes water and your nose tingle. We did not throw the bottles away. The glass was thick and valuable. Returning the empty bottles to the local shop in exchange for a few forints was a serious responsibility, often assigned to the children. We would carefully carry them in our woven string bags, listening to them clink against each other like musical chimes. Sharing a single bottle with your best friend, wiping the rim with the sleeve of your shirt, was a gesture of true trust. The taste of those sweet, bubbly drinks is deeply intertwined with the carefree laughter of our endless summer holidays. And now let us remember a small magical box that brought the sounds of the whole world into our hands. Think about the heavy rectangular shape of the classic Sokol radio. Almost every household had one, usually tucked away in its snug brown leather carrying case. Do you remember the distinct smell of that old leather mixed with the warm scent of the electronic components inside? Turning it on was a tactile experience. You would slowly turn the stiff plastic dial on the side, listening to the loud crackling static as you searched for a clear signal. The physical sensation of tuning the radio, feeling the slight resistance of the dial, is something modern touchscreens can never replicate. When you finally caught a station, the voice of the announcer or the melody of a popular song would emerge from the static like a hidden treasure. We took that radio everywhere. It sat on the kitchen table while our mothers cooked Sunday lunch. It accompanied us to the weekend house, playing softly while our fathers tended to the grapevines or mowed the lawn. It was placed on a blanket at the beach, its small speaker fighting against the sound of the splashing waves. That little radio was our faithful companion, a reliable source of music, news and comfort, connecting our quiet, private moments to the wider world outside. Let us turn our minds to the countryside, to the unmistakable sight of the traditional square houses where so many of our grandparents lived. Do you remember the architectural charm of the Kadarkotska, the classic cube house with its steep, tent-shaped roof? Arriving there for the weekend was like stepping into a sanctuary of slow living. The front yard was always immaculately kept, bursting with colourful flowers and the scent of freshly turned earth. When you opened the front door, you were greeted by a very specific, comforting aroma. It was a blend of floor wax, old wood, and the rich, savoury smell of chicken soup simmering slowly on the stove. Inside, the walls were thick and cooling in the summer heat. Do you recall the pristine lace curtains on the windows, casting intricate shadows on the painted floors? The silence in those houses was profound, broken only by the rhythmic, heavy ticking of the pendulum wall clock. Tick, tock. It was a sound that slowed down your heartbeat and made you realize there was no need to rush. You would sit at the large kitchen table, eating thick slices of fresh bread with homemade jam, while your grandmother watched you with quiet, smiling eyes. Those square houses were fortresses of love and tradition, places where time stood still and where we always felt completely and utterly safe. And now let us remember the ultimate culinary experience of a Hungarian summer. Imagine standing barefoot on the hot concrete near the beach at Lake Balaton, the sun beating down on your shoulders. In the air there is an irresistible, heavy scent of hot oil mixed with pungent garlic. You are waiting in line at the small wooden kiosk to buy a freshly fried lángos. Do you recall the sound of the dough hitting the sizzling oil, bubbling and expanding into a golden, crispy disc? The vendor would fish it out with metal tongs, tossing it onto a piece of rough white paper. The classic preparation was simple but divine. A quick brush of garlic water, a generous smear of thick, cold sour cream, and a mountain of grated Trapista cheese that would immediately start to melt from the heat of the dough. Eating it was a joyful challenge. Your hands would become incredibly greasy, and the garlic water would inevitably drip down your chin. You ate it while still wearing your wet, sandy swimsuit, the cold water of the lake still dripping from your hair. We did not care about calories or napkins. We just tore into the hot, crispy, chewy dough, savouring the salty, garlicky perfection. That hot, greasy lángos was the taste of pure summer freedom, a delicious reward after hours of swimming and splashing in the warm, shallow waters of our beloved lake. Let us recall a time when the absence of something actually created something beautiful. Do you remember when Mondays meant there was absolutely no television broadcast? Today, the idea of a screen going dark seems unimaginable, but back then it was a weekly reality. On Monday evenings, the heavy wooden television set sat silent and dark in the corner of the room, and because the screen was dark, our homes lit up with real life. Do you remember what we did instead? Those were the evenings dedicated to deep, uninterrupted family time. Your parents would bring out the worn cardboard box of the Gazdal Kodokusan board game. You would sit around the kitchen table, laughing, rolling the dice, and trying to buy a miniature washing machine or a piece of furniture for your paper apartment. Or perhaps the house was wonderfully quiet, filled only with the rustling of book pages. Your father might be reading the newspaper while your mother knitted or mended clothes. We talked to each other. We actually looked into each other's eyes and discussed our day without the distraction of flickering lights and background noise. We thought we were missing out on entertainment, but looking back, those broadcast-free Mondays were a precious gift. They forced us to connect, to use our imaginations, and to appreciate the simple, profound joy of each other's company. And now let us remember a symbol of youthful pride that we wore on our feet. Think about the iconic Tisa shoes, the ultimate athletic footwear of our generation. Do you recall the very first time you opened the cardboard box and inhaled that strong, fresh smell of new rubber and leather? The classic design, with its bold, contrasting colours and the prominent T logo stitched on the side, was instantly recognizable. Getting a pair of genuine Tisa shoes was a significant event. They were not just sneakers, they were a status symbol on the school playground. Remember how incredibly durable they felt. The rubber soles were thick and tough, designed to withstand endless games of football on harsh concrete courts and rough gravel paths. When you laced them up, you felt like you could run faster and jump higher than ever before. We did not have dozens of shoes to choose from. We had this one good pair, and we wore them everywhere. We wore them until the colours faded from the sun, until the white laces turned a permanent shade of grey, and until the soles finally wore smooth. Taking care of them meant wiping them down with a damp cloth, hoping to keep them looking new just a little bit longer. Those heavy, sturdy shoes carried us through the most energetic years of our lives, step by step, game by game, across the playgrounds of our childhood. Let us think about a small red booklet that taught us our very first lessons about the future. Do you remember the school ritual of the takadek belieg, the saving stamps? Every week, usually on a designated day, we would bring a few small coins to school. The teacher would hand out brightly coloured, perforated stamps, and we would carefully glue them into our little red savings books. Do you recall the rough texture of the paper and the slightly sweet taste of the glue on the back of the stamp when you licked it? Filling a whole page was a matter of immense pride. We were not just collecting pieces of paper, we were building dreams. You would calculate exactly how many more stamps you needed to finally buy that new football, a board game, or perhaps a new bicycle. The physical act of watching your savings grow, stamp by stamp, page by page, taught us patience. We learned that good things do not come instantly. They require waiting, discipline, and consistent effort. We did not have digital banking applications or instant gratification. We had a tangible, paper record of our hard work. When the book was finally full, taking it to the post office or the bank to redeem your money felt like crossing the finish line of a marathon. That little red booklet was our first step into the adult world, teaching us the profound value of holding on to hope for tomorrow. And now let us remember the beautiful, meticulous preparations for a new school year. As September approached, the dining table would be cleared and transformed into a workshop. Do you recall the massive rolls of the classic blue wrapping paper used to cover our squared notebooks? The projector. The smell of that fresh paper was sharp and full of anticipation. Your mother would carefully cut the blue paper to the exact size, folding the edges tightly over the covers of the notebooks. The sound of the scissors gliding through the paper, slicing perfectly, is a sound that stays with you forever. Then came the most delicate part. Do you remember peeling the small, white, rectangular labels and sticking them exactly in the center of the front cover? You would take your favorite fountain pen and with your best, most careful handwriting, write down your name, your class, and the subject. The ink would flow smoothly onto the crisp paper. The notebooks felt heavy, clean, and full of untouched possibilities. We treated our school supplies with immense respect. Opening a newly covered notebook for the first time, smelling the fresh ink and the clean paper, felt like a sacred ritual. It was a tangible sign of a fresh start. We did not just throw our books in a bag. We wrapped them in care, preparing our minds for the long, rewarding journey of learning. Let us turn to one final memory, perhaps the most tender of all. Think about the physical weight of a handwritten letter arriving in the mail. In an era long before instant messaging, communicating across distances required effort and heart. Do you remember going to the small post office near the holiday resort to buy a colorful postcard? You would sit at a wooden desk, smelling the distinct aroma of old ink and floor wax. You had to choose your words carefully, because the space on the card was limited. You wrote with a blue ballpoint pen, pressing hard against the cardboard, sending your love to your grandparents or friends back home. But even more magical was waiting for the postman to arrive at your own house. Do you recall the tactile joy of recognizing a loved one's handwriting on a thin, blue airmail envelope? You would slice it open carefully, holding the crinkling paper in your hands. Reading those words felt like the person was standing right next to you, whispering in your ear. The ink might be slightly smudged, a physical testament to the hand that wrote it. We did not delete these messages. We kept them in decorative shoeboxes at the bottom of our closets, saving them for years. Those letters were pieces of our hearts, tangible proof of our love and connection, carrying the warmth of human touch across miles and years, something no digital text will ever replicate. When we look back at all of these beautiful memories, it becomes wonderfully clear. We do not just miss the old objects, the heavy bicycles, or the sweet taste of the winter ice cream. What we truly mourn, what we deeply long for, is the profound sense of time, our boundless youth, and the irreplaceable connection we had with one another. Life was slower, yes, but it was incredibly full of real textures, vivid smells, and conversations that lasted long into the quiet, television-free nights. If this journey back in time brought a smile to your face, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and like this video, so we can continue preserving these precious pieces of our shared history. And now, I would love to hear from you. Which of these 20 memories made your heart beat just a little bit faster today? Do you have a personal story about a summer at Lake Balaton, or a special evening ritual from your childhood? Please write your own beautiful story in the comments below and let us keep the warmth of those golden years alive together.